Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome to today's video. Today we are doing a analysis review of the West Virginia 41. And why are we doing a analysis review of the West Virginia 41? Well, because this is the ship that is in the second progression line of the reward pass for update 14.6. And I felt like I always been doing on this channel, I always review these ships to kind of give you an idea whether or not these ships are worth it. And if you do end up getting that second progression line, what to expect with this thing, basically. I know a lot of people hold off to purchasing that second progression tier line to see kind of if the ship is good or whatnot. And that's kind of my job here to kind of illustrate to you how this ship stacks up in not only the current meta, but also is there a fun factor and kind of how to play her. That's kind of my job here and what I like enjoying doing for you guys. So we're doing something a little bit different where I'm going to show you guys two games in the background. More often than not, just so if you get bored or kind of get, dull of whatever I'm saying, you can just watch the background video while I'm talking about it. But also, I don't feel like this ship in particular was worth talking about a port analysis, as I've already done a whole deep dive analysis on the USN battleships to the Montana line, which I highly recommend you guys go check out. And this is kind of following suit with that. So without further ado, I'll kind of just delve in and start talking about her. So first thing first, what is the West Virginia 41? Well, as you know, unless you've been living under a rock, there are two West Virginias in this game. There's the West Virginia 41 down here at tier 6, and there's the West Virginia 44 up at tier 7. Both have significantly different play styles. I want to get that right out the gates first, right out the bat. Two, they are the same ship. This is the Pearl Harbor post-modernization version of the West Virginia, and then the West Virginia 44 is the modernized version of the West Virginia. If you know the history, that's awesome. If not, I highly recommend following up on the subject because it is quite interesting. So in Wargames Infinite Wisdom, there was some drama behind this ship, as we were given this ship as the West Virginia, and then people really wanted the post-modernized version, and they promised it to us. I think it was 3-4 years in the making, and they finally gave it to us. And to appease the battleship mob, they decided to give that ship secondaries, which is a lot of fun. I actually have I think a battle report or something like that on this channel. You can guys go ahead and check that out as well. Very, very fun ship, and I do highly recommend the West Virginia 44 in the short little review. Obviously, this isn't a 44, this is a 41 review, but speaking about the 44, I do recommend that ship. A lot of fun, very strong, if you know what you're doing. The 41, however, is a little bit different. This ship really models that of the Colorado at tier 7, as they both do. They are both a Colorado class battleship, but this one kind of imitates the standard battleship role, not necessarily the secondary brawling role that the West Virginia 44 has. And that can either be good or bad depending on who you are as a player. For me, I'm coming in with this review already a little bit of some, let's say, illicit bias against the ship because I'm not a biggest fan of the Colorado. I think the Colorado could be a good ship. If you watched my analysis on that, you did see that I am not a fan personally, but I can tip my hat to the times that the Colorado decides to show up to the game, and these salvos go where you want them to go. But more often than not, they are not going where you want them to go at all in the slightest. And the West Virginia 41 has the same problem, and it's a tier lower, which either can be your influence to purchase the ship or whether to stay away from it, in my opinion. Obviously, this thing blows the New Mexico out of the water. I think the New Mexico is a dog shit ship, and I hate that ship to death. But this one's a little bit more bearable and a little bit more fun. And the big thing with it is you actually have overmatch, which for 406s, which is actually phenomenal. for dealing with other enemy battleships, but not so much when dealing with enemy cruisers, because cruisers, especially at this tier, are so lightly armored. Usually you just end up overpenning with your large caliber guns. This is a problem. You do see that. For destroyers, pretty irrelevant, other than the fact that usually because you have bigger guns, you have a larger AP strike, so your 10% shell damage actually is a little bit more. If you choose not to switch to HE, though you saw what I did when I did switch to HE, what I could do to the LTR go right there. The armor scheme is very, very standard for what you get with an American Tier 6 battleship. There's really no significant changes there. But basically, just to rip off some subtle facts here in the first video, which this is when I'm bottom tier, the next one's when I'm top tier. This has about 50,200 HP, which is kind of in the range, in the middle of all these ships, I believe. I think the highest belonging to the ESA at 58,700. Detection by the sea standard is 15.93 or 15.93 kilometers base. I do recommend taking the concealment skill a little bit, just to get that down a little bit, because that is fairly high for the tier, and you're going to want to play that just a little bit down. And it's not so much if you're top tier. I really don't care if I'm spotted if I'm a top tier battleship like this, but if I'm bottom tier in a tier 8 game, yeah, any little thing helps, right? There are some things to note about this ship. This ship is incredibly slow, reaching out or topping out at 21 knots as a top speed. I do highly recommend taking the captain skill brisk, as it will allow you to position towards the beginning of the game and middle to end of the game when there are less ships being able to spot you in your standard detection range. This will help you get around the map a little bit quicker, but really calling this thing quick in any regarding the name is really not accurate at all, because it ain't quick. This ship does have the slowest acceleration time. Acceleration is reaching your top speed starting from a standstill. This has 41.1 second acceleration time, which is utter dog shit. So you're going to have to factor that in. For a lot of us that like the Vermont, which I don't understand why the Vermont gets it, but whatever. That kind of line, the Kansas, Minnesota, Vermont, like acceleration, this ship does not get that. It's at tier 6. That is a pipe dream for this ship, and you're really gonna have to play around that slow lumbering kind of dreadnought style BB, because it is very, very incredibly slow, and is painful at times to deal with. So again, that could be a massive turnoff for you too. If you don't like slow battleships, especially battleships that are slow, don't have much armor, that are very detectable, well then those are pretty much three massive negatives that this ship does have. Rudder shift time for the, let me get to my notes here. The rudder shift time for this ship is clocking in at 13.7, turning circle radius of 670 meters. Yeah, she handles decently well. Like, it's not like utter trash for that. But again, like, the worst ship in regards of rudder shift is the Fuso at 14.9, and for the turning circle radius, I think is the Repulse with 860. So again, that makes up for the slow speed, but does it really? You know what I mean? You have to like factor that in. That comes down to you as the commander, what you can tolerate, what you really can't. So that's one thing. If you're playing this ship, you're gonna have to tolerate. And I guess the main premise of like the idea of this ship is you are like a hard-hitting BB, kind of like what the Vermont is at tier 10. You are more about quality over than quantity, though the quality of this ship isn't always there, as your guns just really don't like to cooperate half the time. And I have hard data on that as well. I mean, a 1.8 Sigma with a maximum range of 16.1 with the spotting aircraft active, you can get that up, obviously, and you can take the plotting room artillery mod if you so choose, which again I recommend. Your horizontal dispersion, let's say 20 kilometers, is 260 meters with a vertical of 169, which is not winning you any awards, especially that horizontal dispersion is quite yikes. That's the up down. The shells are likely going up down rather than left and right like a shotgun. So it's not really a shotgun in the essence of horizontally spread. Your vertical spread, though, 100% like a shotgun. And that will be the most frustrating, because I feel like I can deal with horizontal usually, because that at least allows me to land shells on target, whereas the vertical usually land either behind or in front of, and that is probably the most frustrating. The reload is standard at 30 seconds with 180-degree turn time of 45 seconds. Again, pretty standard stuff. Not really going to win too many awards there. Again, you have 8 406mm guns. These are essentially Colorado guns. And you have them down a tier low, which sounds phenomenal in practice. But again, the shells that this thing fires, I just don't really like, because they are what 1,016 kilograms. Like they are pretty heavy, I guess, so to speak, and their penetration is fairly, it is very good. And the fuse time is standard at 0.033 seconds, but I just feel like, I mean, again, you can read all these numbers all you want, but for me, I feel like I'm overpenning a lot on cruisers, even when I should be scoring citadels, just because of the massive guns, which again, what is this, the Baltimore right there? I don't know how the hell I overpenned there, but again, this is the problem that you're going to get in this ship, even when you are bottom tier for some reason. I don't understand it. Fair note talking about the HE shells. The HE shells are clocking in at, where are you with your damage? About 5,700 damage. They have a fire chance of 36% with penetrating about 68 millimeters of effective armor, so that's averaging about 5.8 fires a minute. I never shoot HE in this thing, guys, and if I do, it's because, like, for example, in the LTR in the beginning of the game with the destroyers, that's the only time I'm relatively switching to HE. You have 406s. Most cruisers you can overmatch, right? You can overmatch those 30 millimeter plates. But against any other, even enemy BBs, you can chunk them pretty hard. But the second you reach that 32 millimeter threshold, you're kind of struggling, and you're getting those ricochets, especially with the deck, the bow, and the stern, right? Those are the kind of things that frustrate you. But then in return, you can just massively get overmatched by those, including 380 millimeter guns, because you're only a tier 6 BB after all. Secondaries, not really worth talking about. I mean, you do have the 8 times 1, 127 mils, and you have the 10 times 1, 127 mils, again, singles there. I mean, your secondary DPM, actual hitting DPM, I guess is worth talking about, is 24,673 with only a range of 5 kilometers. You're not building for secondaries. Please do not build for secondaries. That's why you have the West Virginia 44. If you want to play a secondary American, I guess, middle tier battleship, you're going to buy the West Virginia 44 because that's where you're going to have a lot of fun because you actually have good DPM with that and hitting DPM and ranges that you can actually work with. So please, please, please do not build for secondaries because it's 100% not worth it. Anti-aircraft is utter ass. Again, don't worth specking into it. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you guys that. I do take, what is it, the tier 2 AA skill though, because I'm actually mainly buffing my ASW planes. I guess the A is okay at times. Again, this is just one of those things we saw my captain build. It just helps, but it's not like the best. You could probably, if you wanted to, you can invest the 2 points elsewhere if you're missing something like vigilance, for example. But again, I'm not really getting this thing in brawling range because by the time I do get it to brawling range, either the battle is over and I'm just fodder for the enemy team, or the battle is already won, or the flank is won, and now I have to relocate to the other flank, and it's just, yeah, shit. These are one of those ships, especially these slow lumbering American BBs, that you kind of want to play more mid around the B flank. And then because you have broadsides that sail towards you, ships give you the broadside rather than sailing to a flank where you only have, less targets, so to speak, that are showing you broadside and more of them are angling to you. So it's just one of those things that I would highly recommend trying to play around. And then the last but not least is your consumables. You have your 20-second lasting damage con standard. You have your 28-second long heal, which heals 14% standard, and you have your spotting aircraft. Funny enough, I actually do recommend in the first slot, if you want to spend the coal, getting that spotter plane modification because your range is such shit. I actually do recommend taking it because you can extend the duration of your spotter plane, which is awesome. Even though you extend the range, you're not really going to be landing as many shells as you would like from those ranges, but it is going to help because your base range is so incredibly small that it's going to help alleviate that issue and that concern for you guys. So again, though, it's flipping a coin whether or not you're actually going to be landing those shells, as you've seen a couple salvos of me doing here in the background. But then every now and then you actually do have decent dispersion. Like, oh my God, where was that? 4 salvos ago when I really needed it. So yeah, and then again when you shoot and you hit targets, I mean. Armor piercing, right? It's wonky. I don't know how to describe it. So after all that stuff I just listed off, now we can actually talk about the game, some strategy involved with her, and whether or not I recommend picking her up. Well, first off, she is a low-tier American battleship, and I think this is a great alternative to the Tech Line New Mexico. I think the New Mexico actually has more problems, and I think the New Mexico should just, probably gets away with spamming HE more often than not. This ship is the exact opposite of that, and now you have overmatch, which the New Mexico doesn't. But you only have 8 guns, you don't have the 12, which usually I like battleships that have more guns. This is the exception when it comes to comparing to the New Mexico, because I don't care how many guns New Mexico has, it's not making that ship any better or any more viable, other than being an HE spammer and fodder. If you like the New Mexico, I'm sorry, I hate that ship. But then again, same with the Colorado. I'm not a big fan of the Colorado, and I think that's because tier 7 is a really big pivotal tier, where a lot of the game really starts coming together, and you're either seeing tier 9 ships that completely outclass your ship tenfold, or you're getting top tier, and then it's super fun. But even then, with the Colorado can slap, but it has the same exact glaring issues that this ship has. And that's kind of what I'm trying to highlight. If you don't like the Colorado, you most likely will not like this ship. That's pretty much the basic comparison I can tell you, and way of trying to like sell this ship or not sell this ship. If you don't mind the Colorado like myself, then there is fun to be had in this ship. But if you like your top tier American battleships and you want something that's a little more fun, that's not the New Mexico at this tier, yeah, I think she's a blast. I think there's a lot of fun to be had as she has the 406s. Now, on the contrary, I did do an Arizona analysis, and I actually didn't mind the Arizona because that's a little bit more of like an accurate sniping BB, or at least it tries to be, which again is a big improvement on the New Mexico in a lot of ways. This is the next thing that I kind of want to ask myself, and I'm going to answer here on the fly. Is this ship better than the Arizona? Yeah, probably it is. And the reason for that just comes down to the overmatching capabilities. Again, you can always say, well, overmatch means nothing if you can't hit the target. Well, and I totally understand that. But I think you're hitting enough where it justifies that the ship is better than the Arizona. Personally, that's just my opinion. Though I actually play the Arizona more. Maybe I'm just an idiot. Maybe I'm naive. I don't know. You like what you like. At the end of the day, it comes down to you as the player. You play what you want to play, and you choose to not play what you don't want to play. So going into the second game now, and this is when we're top tier. It's kind of like a smaller game here, but again, it highlights a lot of the strength this thing does have when it is top tier, because that's what I want to do. I want to show you what gameplay kind of looks like when you're bottom tier, and I want to show you what gameplay looks like when you're top tier. And this is why you want to play this ship, is when you're top tier, because this ship does bully other battleships heavily. Again, it kind of brings that methodical quality over quantity with like the Vermont has at tier 10, and it tries to bring it down here to tier 6. I'm not in any way, shape, or form comparing the Vermont to this ship. I'm just saying the overall idea is the same, with that having 457s, this having 406s. That's kind of what I'm trying to say with this thing. So 2 things that I want to say right off the bat that's going to allow you to get better results in the West Virginia 41. One, you're going to want to play more mid. You don't want to go solely to a flank. You are too slow to relocate, and that's where problems are going to arise, because if that flank is overthrown, you really can't run away. And then also, if you go to flank and your team steamrolls that flank, well, then you're chasing ass the entire time trying to get your guns in range of the other flank that most likely got overrun, because that's what this game is. There's usually one flank that does well and the other flank that doesn't. Very rarely have we ever been in games that both flanks do phenomenal and you guys win the game. Oh, wait a minute, that's called a steamroll. That actually happens more frequently than we thought. It's just one of those things. You just have to, just trust me, you don't want to just go to a flank. This game, a little bit different. It's a smaller game, and I want to make sure that I can support my other battleship here going in and in the sub, which again, this thing, the arch nemesis to this thing is any slow battleship in this game. Fuck, let's be honest. Submarines and aircraft carriers will chew this thing alive. You just don't have the ASW. You drop the 1 bomb per charge, which fucking sucks. Your AA is utter dog shit. You basically are just, again, I've said it again, you're going to be fodder. It's what you're going to be. So you gotta be careful of that. If you see an enemy submarine ping, you probably want to tuck tail and run. I did not do that in this video, and that is a misplay by me. But after playing copious amounts of games for this review for you guys, I can assure you, don't sail towards the submarine. You will regret your life choice immediately, especially homing torpedoes. My God, this thing just gets absolutely chewed alive. But there you go. The reason why we were able to smash that cruiser and not overpen him to death was because he angled, which is what he's supposed to do, and he gets punished for it. He angles, increases his armor threshold, and allows our shells that need more armor to penetrate and detonate within his ship, causing a Citadel ribbon to show up on my screen, which is awesome. Again, showcasing you the horrendous horizontal dispersion that this ship does have. Nice flat broadside Dunkirk, and we only land one shell on target. Frustrating as all hell, but it's just something that you're going to have to cope with because there's no changing it. And there's no really alleviating that issue because a big weakness to this thing and American BBs in general is because from tier 9 and 10, they get access to that artillery plotting room mod. Is it 2 or 3 or whatever it is that decreases dispersion by 11 or 12%, whatever it is. I don't remember it off the head, which is basically an auto take on all those ships mainly, because it's a distinguishing factor for why you'd play those ships compared to other BB lines. Well, that means they also can't take the aiming systems mod 1 in the 3rd slot. You don't have that. And fuck, would this ship ever benefit from having that? Because it doesn't get any improved dispersion to make up for that loss. It gets nothing. As a matter of fact, it actually might get worse, which is honestly horrendous for this ship, because this ship's biggest weakness is the fact that it can't hit dog shit. If we look at the main battery and we're comparing the Colorado, and let's just say a standard range of like 15 kilometers, which is almost maximum range for this thing, which is 16.1. We can see that the sigma value on the Colorado is 2.0, and the sigma on this is already 1.8. Not a good start. And then we're looking at the same horizontal dispersion, which is utter trash at 210 meters. But then the vertical dispersion, we have a little bit of a difference. We have the 117 meter on the Colorado. We have the 123 on the West Virginia, which is obviously a little bit higher. Again, I told you it comes down to that vertical dispersion, and even that slightly increase in how bad the vertical dispersion is enough for me to say that this ship's artillery is really just a watered down Colorado, which is, again, a big red flag for a player like myself, which I don't normally enjoy the Colorado. But for you guys that don't mind that Colorado play style, then yeah, then I think you guys will like this ship. So, personally. Because, again, this ship is all about the big numbers. It's all about the big overmatch. Your armor means nothing because this ship is going to do just flat-out raw damage to you, and that's the bread and butter of this ship. I would like to say that the ship would like to be more of a tank, but it really can't, because if it goes to try to tank, it's just going to melt because it's coated in what is it, 25 millimeters of armor, 26 millimeters of armor. Like, the deck armor is trash. Like, it's just going to melt, like most American BBs do, especially at low tier. Like, if you guys are familiar with all those ships, the New Mexico, the New York, the Colorado, yeah, you just get overmatched a lot by 380 millimeter guns or higher, and the HE spam isn't helping your cause, because you're just basically have gasoline poured all over your deck, and you have a high flammable chance or a rate of getting set on fire. So. But now it comes time to deal with the pesky submarine, and you're going to see the what a homing torpedoes can do to your ship, because you really can't dodge, especially if it gets a somewhat decent ping. If it doesn't ping your nose or ass, if it pings you anywhere midship, you're pretty much fucked, because you're going to get, you can't dodge that, and especially against like a U-69, which the homing torps are pretty freaking good. Yeah, you will eat a lot of fucking damage. I figured that was still full HP here, and I saw the torpedoes coming in, and I was like, you know, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm just going to turn out, take the torpedoes. I'm like, they're not going to do that much damage anyways. They're homing torpedoes, like, whatever, fuck it. And then to my amazement, pretty much half my ship's HP is gone. I was fucking shocked. Which is now why I can almost say that the proposed changes that Wargaming is implementing in 14.7 with like where the homing torpedoes hit, kind of watering them down a little bit, is much needed, because that's going to help a lot of ships like this specifically have a little bit more survivability on the battlefield. But again, we're kind of like buffing battleships, which I think is like the least class it really needs to be buffed anymore. Are there some BBs that need a buff? Well, yeah, no shit. You can say that about every ship in every class. But I feel like a lot of the time we need, like, especially when it comes to like dealing with CVs and subs, I feel like destroyers and cruisers, especially cruisers, need a little bit more love than they're getting. Given the fact that one of the selling point for playing a cruiser is like being a Swiss Army knife and being able to deal with, you know, planes and potentially like submarines, depending on like what nation you're playing as and yada 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 and so and so. And it's really not the case, because I feel like even with the exception of a couple light cruisers /heavy cruisers, I'm still getting dummied on by planes 24/7. So I don't know. It's interesting. That's just a real life opinion coming from a player that's played I don't know how many fucking games like battles in this game, 23,000 some shit. I don't even know what it is now. It's insane. I've played a lot. And that's just a real honest opinion. I'm not going to sit here and say I dislike carriers. Actually, matter of fact, the only problems I have with characters has nothing to do with the damage output that they have. It actually has to do with the spotting potential, because I don't know how many times that's gotten me cross-mapped clapped by battleships. Again, I don't know why battleship players bitch about CBs being in their game. I think it's actually a blessing because all I have to do is spot for you and you get basically free damage, especially on ships that rely on stealth and not being spotted. So, but I digress. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the West Virginia 41. And I'm on the point of the video where I'm talking about some like tips and tricks and things that kind of help, this ship out a little bit. I talked about positioning. Positioning is key, and that's pretty standard with a lot of battleships in this game. I don't think it really is just like, pertaining to the West Virginia 41 solely. But because she is rather on the slower side, I do find that doing a more middle, positioning of your ship is definitely well, advised. So another thing with this ship that I found helped me out a lot is this ship does have a citadel. This ship can be citadel. If you can get all your turrets on target at one time, you're pretty much exposing enough broadside to get citadel. The only thing that makes this ship tankier or feels tankier is the large torpedo protection, like bubbles on the side of each ship. This is the same thing I talked about with the Colorado. This thing actually does have a 22% torpedo protection. The Colorado picking up actually a whopping 37%. It does act like spaced armor at times and can absorb a lot of AP and shell damage, and you get just torpedo protection shatters and penetrations, but that's about it. Which is again saving you from taking raw AP citadel damage, which is much needed and is super nice. So that does help in your factors, so you can factor that in too. Again, when we're dealing with bigger guns, anything probably bigger than 420s, that's really not gonna matter too much. But it is worth noting that I couldn't tell you how many times I've shot a Colorado or I've shot this thing and I'm expecting like massive damage and I get fucking shatters. I'm like, what the fuck? So that is one thing you're gonna have to factor in that can help you in regards of like increasing your survivability mentally. So when shooting this thing, sometimes if it's coming at you at like a slight angle and you're like, oh, I'm gonna aim for the citadel, I would actually like second guess that and aim more upper deck, just because you want to stay away from those torpedo protection shatters, which is rather frustrating, let's be honest. And my last tip with this thing, this is like not a tip pertaining just to West Virginia 41. You can say, well, floppy, that's like battleships in general, but hear me out. You want to shoot AP. You want to shoot AP, and you rarely ever want to switch to high explosive. I don't think your HE is that good to justify switching to it. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, of course. Like if you're in a situation and you guys are all good players, probably you already know your times to switch to your HE. But then again, like I just think you're going to get better results out of your armor piercing as you have 406s, and that's going to be your bread and butter because it's a massive advantage for your ship, which is called overmatch, and you want to take full advantage of that. So very rarely am I ever switching HE. Like here's the one example because I know I can get those HE pens and splash damage on a submarine, and I know that's going to be my main the person I'm fighting at the moment, as their Mutsu is still behind the island there. So that's the only reason I'm switching HE. But like if I'm up tiered and I know I can't overmatch BBs anymore, going against like tier 8s, for example, then yeah, I might switch to HE if they're going nose in at me, like whatever. If I'm not getting like, and let's say if they're like superstructures pretty heavily saturated, you can tell because it's like blackened and darkened, then yeah, I'll switch over to the high explosive and just try to do some like solid, splash damage on the ship and maybe with fire every now and then. But relatively, like I said, you're going to want to stick with the armor piercing. Again, I guess I have one more tip too. Because you're a slow battleship, and I'm usually not a big believer in passive gameplay for BBs, I would try to play more on the era of caution and conservative side of things and play a little bit more passive. Just because, well, naturally you're going to be doing that anyways, right? You're already slow and you really can't get in there and brawl. And I think that's kind of what makes the West Virginia 44 a really good brawler is because once you get up there and committed, like the window has already changed. So sometimes you can't take full advantages of windows, whether or not to push or whatnot, and look at that, and like crossfires and whatnot like that. And you're kind of a slower and methodical like secondary brawler. Um, but yeah, this thing is same kind of deal. Like, you're kind of rewarded a little bit more at times because you're slower, so you really don't have the option to rush in there and die, like a lot of these other ships have. Like, I can't tell you how many times I see battleships, especially with speed boost, or because they have secondaries and they want to race in there because they have to use their speed boost or they have to utilize their secondaries, and you know what? They're dead almost instantaneously because they are forcing something that isn't available to them, and then they go and cry on Reddit or the forums like, "Oh, German BBs are useless," blah blah, and so and so. So just again, approach it more conservatively, and naturally it'll already be presented that way just because of your slower ship. And again, with the brisk skill, which adding an additional 10% if undetected, you're going to get around 23, 24 knots, I think, with the Sierra mic, which again is plenty of speed in order to relocate and adjust, firing lanes and angles, for you, and you can just play around that. So brisk is definitely a mandatory skill on the ship, and I would highly recommend taking brisk, as you saw with the captain build that I have. So this is a captain. This is a ship for all you that do bounce captains from premium ships to tech line ships, whatever. This is a great ship that can tolerate ships going down the main tech line. Also, the line of the Vermont as well. I wouldn't really say much going down to Louisiana, but you could get away with it. Again, it's lower tier. If you need to train up those commanders, by all means do so. Personally, for me, I don't really do that. I just play or put commanders on ships and make them or design them specifically for that ship. I've always had fun doing that because I'm not really a min-maxer. A lot of people in this game are so fucking try-hard and they want to put their legendary commanders on all their ships. And by all means, if you want to do that and be a try-hard, go right ahead. I don't particularly give a fuck outside of comp, where that's where I mostly do that just because it's competitive at that point. But for people like me and randoms or whatnot, I like the idea of having ship-specific commanders. It's just kind of my thing. It makes the game a little bit more fun for me. So again, Mutsu, prime example of another ship that has 410mm guns. They have Overmatch at this tier, and look what Overmatch can do to this ship. Again, because I had all 4 of my turrets to bear on that Mutsu, it is enough that he can do massive penetration damage to my ship, as you saw right there. And same goes to him. If he can get all of his turrets to bear on me, then most likely I can schwack him in return, and I'm like 1 overpen shy of being able to eliminate him. So, final thoughts of the West Virginia 41. Is this ship enough to justify spending the 2,000 or 2,500 dubs on the Battle Pass alone? No. I think that coupled with maybe like the steel and other rewards that you're getting potentially, yeah, it's going to be like a you decision. But this shouldn't be the sole factor for why you're going to buy the Battle Pass. I just think the ship is fun and it can be good at times, but it isn't fucking great. And again, I'm playing other battleships at this tier. Like for me, I just find more enjoyment in the USS Arizona, which is crazy to say because I think this ship is just inherently better, but I just find more fun in that thing. And that could just come down to more of a mentality thing with me. Again, having the 12 shells, not having the high, shell speed and lightweight of the New Mexico shells because the Arizona is a little bit different. Maybe that's what it is. But again, that's just my opinion. And you can take that with a pinch of salt. Because what is my opinion to you? At the end of the day, if you do value my opinion, that's awesome. If you don't, hey, this is just entertainment for you. But then again, at the end of the day, I just want to showcase to you guys what this ship can do. And I can show you that she is at times a blast to play. So again, both these games were E-ranked. Not that that really means anything. But you can have great games in her, and she can be fun. And more of like a fuck around ship, in my opinion. So. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the little deep dive analysis video here today, and I will catch you all in the next one. All right, peace out, guys.